Welcome to How We Get Through, the podcast where we share stories, mental health insights, and healing advice on life's everyday challenges. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder of the How We Get Through app. Today's guest is Abby Wambaugh, a licensed psychotherapist in Los Angeles. And in this episode, Abby shares her own personal journey with chronic pain and about the unique challenges of getting an actual diagnosis. She also talks about the importance of having a collaborative care team, reminding us that everyone's journey with chronic pain is unique. And if you are on this journey, tune in to reclaim control and find comfort. Hi, and welcome back. Today's guest is Abby Wambaugh. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in Los Angeles, California. Abby helps people get through chronic pain, sexual issues, complex trauma, and relationship frustrations. You know about those. Abby is certified in havening, which helps people heal from sticky, traumatic memories. She's also a yogi who loves backpacking and hiking, and her two cats named Frida and Quentin Perentino. Quentin Perentino. Say that with me.
Quentin Perentino.
Oh my gosh, so good. Hi, Abby. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, we love to start off every episode with a mental health myth just to bust down the doors and get to the truth. And so we would love to know yours.
Sure. So I was thinking about this and specifically thinking about the idea of grief. And I think oftentimes we think grief is only about the loss of a person or a relationship. And in my work with chronic pain, I found that grief is a significant part of healing from a chronic pain experience and living with chronic pain. Not only do you have to grieve sort of that initial loss and experience of pain, but the process of finding healing, the process of seeing what parts of you are maybe put on hold or aren't possible anymore because of your chronic pain. It just feels like there's a lot of layers of grief as you learn to live with your chronic pain. And even once it's managed, there's still moments of grief that tend to come up for whether it's about past experiences or encountering a new part of your chronic pain.
Yes, I love that. That is so good. Grief is you can get certified in so many grief things as a therapist, but it's such once you start to break it open, there's grief in so many different areas in life, and especially when it comes to chronic pain. I love that.
It comes up a lot too. Anything that's really chronic, like OCD or ADHD, even chronic mental health issues have a grief component because you're operating in an atypical way from whatever the typical is of the world. And it's the same with chronic pain. Your body is operating or you're experiencing pain in an atypical way.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And you starting off in therapy or becoming a therapist, what made you decide to become a therapist?
There's like a short, a medium, and a long version of that answer. So I'll see what version I give you today. I feel like it was a few things. I had pretty debilitating anxiety and OCD in high school and throughout college. And so initially, I wanted people to have a type of support that I didn't feel like I had. And then it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I really experienced chronic pain. And I had no plan to specialize in chronic pain. In some ways, it actually felt too close to my experience to even specifically see clients who were managing chronic pain. But as I healed more from my own chronic pain and was a therapist, I realized that there's just not a lot of practitioners that really understand the experience of chronic pain. I think it's we as therapists like to help people heal and move on. And you don't really heal from chronic pain, you manage it. So it's not really a sexy kind of therapy. It's a different type of rewarding, but it's helping people live with and chronically grieve this experience of who they are and what their body is in this new experience of health that they have. So it's not why I became a therapist, and it's not even what I wanted to specialize in as I was starting to get into therapy, but it's something that I have so much experience in and worked through myself that I do like to work with clients that have chronic pain and like to help them find whatever their combination of mental health and physical health and practitioners and naturopathic and whatever their sort of whole process of living well with their chronic pain is. And not just taking a sort of, if you manage your thoughts, then you can manage your pain approach. I really try to see it from a more holistic lens, because that's certainly what was most helpful for me and what I've read in research is most helpful for people.
Yeah. Wow. I'm still on that line, like managing the chronic pain, like not curing it. It's not going to be over, but how are you going to continue to manage that? And in your practice and when clients come in, are they, I mean, I'm sure they're all across the gamut, but where do they usually land when they come into your office as far as the grief scale of that, where they're like, I know I'm going to have this forever, or I don't want this forever?
Mm-hmm. I think I've seen all different things. I feel like one commonality, no matter where someone is at, is that some part of you is usually fighting it. Either fighting a label or fighting the grief, or you're just sort of fighting moving forward, because staying in grief almost keeps you from having to figure out how to live with this thing that you never wanted in the first place. So I think I see people in all different stages, but that's probably the one common thread, no matter who ends up stepping in my office with chronic pain.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think I speak for myself as a therapist, like we get into it because we got healing or we were so impacted by a certain thing that we were like, this is our way forward and this is how we can help ourselves and so many other people. Where were you where it felt like you have enough space to start helping people? And if you can if you want to talk about your own chronic pain journey around that.
I was still experiencing chronic pain pretty acutely when I was in graduate school. And so I actually sought out a chronic pain therapist. And it was really hard to find someone who specialized in chronic pain. And my own therapist, I felt like, did a great job of disclosing small pieces of her own journey. You know, as for people who are listening who might not be therapists, you might not know that self-disclosure is a clinical choice and an ethical choice, sort of talking about yourself, revealing parts of your story. And you don't have to have experienced what your clients are going through to be a good therapist, but there is something about chronic pain that it really helped me to know my therapist had her own journey and got parts of it. Got the sometimes I want to be a victim, and sometimes a victim of my chronic pain, and sometimes the last thing I want is to be associated with my chronic pain. So I think going through my own chronic pain healing journey while I was becoming a therapist with the intention to work on people's relationships, I never thought I would really work with chronic pain. And then as it happens sometimes, you don't look for things and yet they find you. And so I had a couple of clients who had chronic pain and just found that they were a really good fit with me and that I felt empowered and like I had the right resources and experience to help them. And it didn't feel like it was too triggering for my own experience. So I don't know that I decided to start working with chronic pain or there was a moment I knew that I was ready to start working with chronic pain. I think it was just something that found its way to me. And then I felt like I had done enough healing to be a good resource. And I will say, thankfully, I'm at a place right now where my chronic pain is so humming in the background of my life that it's not very present. And I think that's part of why I feel like I can work well with people who are experiencing chronic pain. I'm not managing it between sessions, for example, which I think also makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Like having enough space to be able to be there for your clients. And it's just so interesting because I never thought, because I don't specialize in chronic pain, I haven't experienced it yet. I'm sure I will. This body is breaking down slowly, that's for sure. But it's so much more than past the therapy room. And I think that's where, us as healers here's this one thing, but there's also so much more. And I just think it's so interesting. And maybe you can kind of expand a little bit on that of what are the additional resources when someone is dealing with chronic pain? Like, how are you working with other people, or how are you being a connector in that way?
Sure. And actually, I know that you previously specialized in disordered eating and would work with nutritionists and different people because you're not a nutritionist yourself. You're not an expert on how the body processes food and how to help someone be, engaging with their nutrition in a way that is good and healing for them. Similarly, I am not a physical medicine doctor. I did not go to medical school. None of us most of us who are therapists did not. And so I'm not an expert in the body. And I think that's where a lot of therapists feel like they don't know what to do with chronic pain. Like, I'm not actually helping you resolve your physical pain. I'm not an expert on whatever's happening in your body, whether it's chronic migraines or back pain. So I think it's knowing where your limitations are and encouraging your client to follow their intuition about seeking out different types of care. And, this is something I talked about in the course, and I think we also included in the workbook, this idea of not looking for a magic bullet. I think as therapists and as anybody going through or supporting someone going through a chronic condition, if someone is looking for the answer, you kind of have to let them go through that process, but also remind them we are complex beings that need complex care, especially for more murky chronic conditions. So encouraging your client to try out different types of care and listen to their own instinct, not the anxiety or the fear or even the fantasy this is going to cure everything, but the how did I feel sitting with this practitioner? Did I feel the same, better, or worse after I left their office? Do I feel like they're going to be a supportive part of my care team? Encouraging them to seek out different resources and check in with themselves about whether or not it's helpful. And another part of the grieving is inevitably someone will not be helpful or will say something wrong or just not thoughtful. And certainly there's a lot of people out there with less than ideal bedside manner, and it's helping your client navigate that too. Just because this one doctor or this one healthcare professional didn't feel good to you, it doesn't mean no one will. So sort of grieving that and then helping them get back out there so they can try to find the right support and care.
Yeah, which brings up a good point of I would imagine in chronic pain, there is a lot of advocating for yourself, right? Advocating for your symptoms, advocating for your pain level, just keeping track of everything and then having to present it to, a practitioner or someone in the medical field and wanting to be validated.
Well, and this reminds me of one of the criteria in the DSM, actually, I can't remember which one it is, one of the somatic symptom disorders. So essentially, you're having some type of physical symptom and it's largely manifested in your mind, which is it's a big fear of people who are having chronic pain. And it's something doctors will sometimes tell people, if I can't figure it out, then this must be something in your mind. It must not be in your body. And even one of the specific criteria, I think it's maybe it's for illness, anxiety disorder, care seeking. One of those, it talks about a binder full of information about your condition. And anyone who has a chronic condition knows you have to keep all of your records. Even the DSM feels like it stigmatizes people with chronic conditions, I guess is what I'm saying. So I do think it's just a really painful process of supporting someone through getting care. And also, how do you advocate for yourself? How do you remember that you're not quote unquote crazy, even though that's what you might be feeling by the way somebody's treating you or what they're saying to you? And how do you grieve that you have to advocate for care? I think part of the chronic pain journey too is before that you can have this naive feeling of, I go to a doctor and they help me and then I get better and I leave. And that's not usually the chronic pain journey. It's, this doctor actually increased my pain experience or invalidated my pain experience or didn't listen to my pain experience. And part of that too is grieving that you have to advocate, grieving that we exist in an imperfect medical system with imperfect human practitioners that come from all different types of practice. And that's another hurdle to getting care, but it also can be a place of, I think, agency and taking some control back in a condition that feels really out of control often.
Yeah. And do you feel like it's male female issue, like women get dissed more, they get more invalidated in their pain, or in your experience of the clients that are coming to you, or does it feel like they're even? Not to say men don't get invalidated, but
I feel like I've seen it, anything systemic, any systemic power differential shows up in chronic pain as well. Like I've seen people feel completely invalidated because someone is the same ethnicity as them, and so they're making assumptions about their experience. I've seen people feel invalidated because they're a woman with a male practitioner and they feel like they're not being listened to or heard. I also, like in my personal journey, the best advocates were men. And I actually did not feel very supported by the female doctors I saw. So it's, I think it's really kind of person to person. I had an incredible doctor who did one of my surgeries in New York, and he was this amazing pain management specialist. And then I had an amazing neurologist, but then I had a great female physical therapist. So, I feel like it's certainly another layer, but it doesn't mean men don't provide good care or that women always feel unheard by male doctors. I think, thankfully, I feel like that's shifting, even though it still happens.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think in the pregnancy birth world, there's a lot of nuance there of like what is happening in your body or what's normal pain, what's not, even aftercare and all of that. And so even the idea of like tuning into your body, listening to your body, paying attention to your body, like following your body, as painful as it is, right? But this idea of like learning to tune in or go inward in order to know how to advocate or what to advocate for. And then invalidating your own experience in that as well, like, because no one else is in your body, right? Which can be frustrating, but also empowering of like, I'm feeling this, or this is happening for me, or it keeps happening when I do this, or at this time of day, or when the weather is like this, or whatever. So yeah, I think it's how, what I'm hearing from you is you're empowering clients in this way of how we can live and manage it without wishing it away, even though there's times for that, but that it can be this empowering experience and a way through it.
And there can be a good support system around you. And finding that support system is a part of your journey of management. I think, something else that I work through with clients is potentially filing a report against a physician. Maybe that's a way they want to advocate for themselves. As any healthcare, any insurance company, most doctors, like shared doctors practices. I know, for example, Kaiser has like a wonderful process of like filing a complaint against someone if you didn't get the care that you needed. So even navigating with a client, if that would be helpful and healing, or if that would be more taxing for them to do. I think all of it is, how do you find the right care? When do you advocate? When do you just say, I'm going to just let this one be? But it is certainly, it's nuanced, whether we're talking about after pregnancy care and your body is different and you're having trouble knowing what's normal pain and what's not, and you're trying to find the words and you don't know if they're coming across the way that you're experiencing it in your body to the doctor you're talking to. It can all be very disorienting to be feeling your body not feel right and not quite sure if it's something that you should just let ride out or if it's something that you need to get care for.
Yes. Yeah. And it just sounds like it's such a mental game. Like there's such a focus on the physical because it is very physical, but it's 50% mental, right? Is this real pain? Is it not? How long do I wait it out? Then there's the anxiety, all these other things. And so it's just interesting the more that you talk about it. I think even from my perspective as a therapist, how much mental support and care is needed when going through chronic pain.
I mean, anything chronic, but we're specifically talking about chronic pain. it's another layer on your life every day. And being existing in the world as a human is hard. If you had anything on top of it, if you add, your child is sick and you're having a pain flare up, and it's raining in LA, and whatever the different, all of the different layers, it's this one layer that's just always stacked on top of you every day.
Yeah. Do you mind talking about your chronic pain journey and what that was?
Sure. I feel like they're all kind of unusual in their own way, but mine is a particularly disorienting and confusing one. I used to be a rock climber. I was a huge skier, like not just regular skiing, like backcountry. I was a yogi. I was training for a half marathon. Like physical endurance sports and activities were a part of my life and my everyday, and they were very life-giving for me. And I'd always done them. I was a cross-country runner when I was younger. And so
where did you grow up?
I grew up
to do all these outdoor things.
Well, not where you would think. I grew up outside of Houston, Texas.
Okay.
But we were just a big snow family. So we spent a lot of time in the snow.
Fun.
And I had just gotten back from a ski trip, like an epic ski trip with a couple friends of mine. I was training for a half marathon with a friend. I was feeling really great, was in a movie theater, and started having debilitating pain in my right knee. Out of nowhere, just sitting in the movie theater. Hadn't had, to my knowledge, still to this day, I've gone over it a million times trying to figure out how it happened, what happened. I hadn't had any type of like an accident or an injury, which usually would be the precursor to something like that. And I remember I had trouble walking out of the movie theater. I was like 26.
Oh my God.
And then it just got worse and worse. Like the pain got worse. No doctor could really tell me what was going on, because their doctors trained to find the problem. Some of them, I had I can't tell you how many diagnoses that ended up not being what I had. Somebody told me I had chondromalacia, which is essentially deterioration of cartilage, which can happen in young athletes. Somebody told me I had this really awful diagnosis, I won't say. But somebody told me I had basically you're going to just have a horrible experience for the rest. A really debilitating diagnosis that did not turn out to be true. So I had everything from, here's a really easy fixed answer that wasn't true, to here's something that could be an awful, horrible diagnosis that's going to absolutely torture you every day that also wasn't true. And I ended up having an unnecessary surgery because a doctor had said, I think this will fix your pain, and gave me an 80% chance. There's an 80% chance this will fix your pain. At that point, I'd been in pain for years without much of a solution. And so you get desperate when you're in pain, and somebody tells you, I think we could do this, and I think it would alleviate your pain. So it was just a really long journey to figuring out what was even going on and what was going to help. And it felt like a lot of things hurt. And in the end, I think the only thing that felt sort of right is I was told that I have specific nerve sensitivity and pain in my right knee. And usually that comes from an injury, but mine didn't come from an injury. So they ended up removing a nerve from my knee, which is also kind of weird that a part of my knee is sort of numb. And that didn't immediately fix the pain either. But between that and some really wonderful, a couple of really wonderful physical therapists I had, the chronic pain therapists who helped me with the kind of fear, mental rabbit holes I was going down, just imagining that this complicated, not clear answer pain I was having would just escalate. And I think just time in my own work and comfort in my body and learning how to care for myself, it is very managed at this point. I still feel pain when the weather changes, if I work out a lot in a certain way, but it's not the same debilitating. There was a time when I couldn't have any kind of fabric touching my knee. It was so sensitive. And nerve pain in particular is very murky and unknown and complicated. So it was this, random, intense knee pain. And then my long journey trying to figure out how to solve it and even what it was. And then finding ways to live with what was still left over after those surgeries that have led me to where I am now.
Wow. And so that nerve surgery, was that the unnecessary surgery, or that was the second surgery that was necessary?
The second surgery was the attempt to remove the nerve, and they missed it. Because
oh my God.
Like if you've ever seen an actual, I have no desire to be a surgeon that works with nerves, but they are like threads. They are threads in your body. And even if you specialize in it, there's like a lot of things that can be mistaken for a nerve, and they don't want to cut something that's the wrong thing. So the third surgery was the correct nerve was removed. The first surgery was the surgery, it's called a tibial tubercle transfer. It's a young woman. It's also called sometimes a young woman's knee replacement. And that was a really debilitating, like, I was living in New York at the time. I couldn't put any weight on my leg for 6 weeks, and I lived in a 3-story walk-up apartment.
Right.
And it was just kind of a crazy, intense surgery and healing process. So yeah, I think part of my own journey, and maybe you're picking this up as I'm talking about it, is that I don't really care about the solution or the diagnosis anymore. I spent years searching for those things, and what I have found now is what I do intuitively that does help me. Like if I'm really having a flare-up, ice on my knee is really helpful. Cold showers, distracting, like I found my own processes. So I think that's kind of complicated too. What healed it? Was it the third surgery and my mind was having phantom nerve pain? That's possible. What did none of the surgeries help and I just got better at managing it? Did I just get better at managing the mental part? I don't know, and there's no way I can know, because I didn't have a condition that was straightforward, like you broke your wrist, we put pins in, and then we took the pins out, and now your wrist is pretty healed.
Right.
It was a much more kind of murky, winding path. And I do like to work with clients who have that too, because I think it's some of the most disorienting of chronic pain experiences. When you don't have a label, you don't have a category, there's not a clear path forward.
Right. Which I think was, when you were beginning to talk about your story, is a huge part, which I have some clients now, of trying to find what's wrong and the millions of avenues and the millions of diagnoses and the anxiety that comes with that, and the not knowing that, like, if I knew, then I could fix it, right? If I knew, then I could fix it. And in some cases, yes, but in the chronic anything, right? It's like you get a test and nothing's wrong with you. Then you get another test and nothing's wrong with you. And so even in that anxiety, the grief, the energy to like keep going and to advocate and to, because no one is a specialist. Like you aren't the specialist in those areas. And so I think it just brings up another layer around the mental load of chronic pain and trying to find out what it is to then have some relief, or a promise of some relief, or a promise of a road of recovery, whatever that looks like.
Well, I think this is where the self-diagnosing and, Reddit rabbit holes of research they like help and hurt. Like you can find people who are really willing to give parts of their story, but our bodies are unique. Even someone else's story is not going to perfectly mirror yours. And I think part of what makes chronic pain so hard is it often feels like a really lonely journey if you don't have someone in your life that has the exact same diagnosis. Even if you do, like 2 people with lupus are not having the same experience with that autoimmune disorder. Someone is having way different types of flare-ups. Someone's journey to living with colitis is going to be way different than someone else's. Someone might be really focusing on diet. Someone might be really focusing on medication management. Even 2 diagnoses diagnosed at the same age are going to be totally different. So I think that's what makes us beautiful, is that we all have these unique selves. And it also is what's really hard when you're trying to find out what's wrong with you and you're going through some type of chronic pain journey, especially an unanswered chronic pain journey.
Unanswered chronic pain journey, which it sounds like, if not all, begin that way.
And whether it's nebulous for 2 hours and then you go to the doctor and you find out, or 2 weeks or
6 years.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I do think one thing I have found in my own process, and I wish we all did more of, is it's really helpful to find a collaborative care team. Like, not a doctor that's just going to say, here's what's wrong with you, but like, here's my thought process behind what's going on. Here's the 3 diagnoses I'm considering. This one feels like it fits the best. It invites someone into the process because they are the expert on their body. Yes, the person who's sitting in the, doctor's office, the patient, they did not go to medical school, most likely. The doctor did, but nobody knows what's happening in your body the way you do. And so that collaborative care is what's really, I think, important and healing. And it's sometimes hard to find. Yeah,
for sure. And something to advocate for.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you do that wonderfully for all your clients.
I try to, especially if nowhere else, I want them to feel like in my office, they know their body better than anyone else does. And I believe their experience. And I also believe they don't have to stay where they're at and their experience, that we can help them find something that has some relief involved.
Yes, love that. Abby, thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom. I feel like I learned so much in obviously the courses, but then it's such a deeper dive as we get to actually talk about it in such a beautiful human way of how we actually experience it as people and as therapists. So thank you so much for that. This is so exciting to learn. And just healing, I think, really validating for a lot of people out there. So
thanks for having me. I think the biggest, if I could, this is Quentin Parentino.
There he is.
I think the biggest takeaway for anyone who might be listening that is currently experiencing chronic pain is wherever you're at is not where you have to stay. And finding the right people who can support you and advocate for you and help you find your path of healing is so important. And a therapist can be an incredible resource in that process, to be in your corner, cheering you on, encouraging you to listen to your instincts, and giving you just a safe space to grieve and process everything that's happening.
Yes. So good. So good. Thank you so much, Abby, for coming on the podcast. Stay tuned for part 2, where Abby will give us some tips on how to get through her chronic pain journey. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening to our show. We hope you feel less isolated on your own chronic pain journey. And if you'd like additional support, check out Abby's course, Chronic Pain, on the How We Get Through app, which is available for both Android and iPhone. Stay tuned for part 2 with Abby as she walks us through the different ways we get to empower ourselves to feel more in control. We'll see you there.